Sheryl Swoopes she's lighting herself on fire, Steve. They had to pull her off a game because she can't be trusted to call Caitlin Clark games correctly or fairly. They basically pulled her off the game for racism. You're too much of a bigot to call Caitlin Clark games. We're pulling you off the game. What is this woman doing?
Every time Caitlin gets fouled, we can't make it seem like she was assaulted. Will Caitlin Clark come into the WNBA and do what she's doing right now? Immediately? Absolutely not. Not gonna happen.
Caitlin Clark just can't make everyone happy, and her biggest hater in the world has been making waves all over the news when she's blatantly refusing to give Clark the recognition she deserves. It goes without saying that Sheryl Swoopes is probably the president of the Caitlin Clark hate club right now, and it's been clear that she may have a personal agenda against the rookie. A lot of people have been calling Swoopes out for not acknowledging how well Clark has been playing, especially the past few weeks when the Indiana Fever suddenly kicked things into high gear and are poised to make some noise in the playoffs. We recently heard Stephen A. going nuclear on Sheryl Swoopes for not even mentioning Clark's name when she was acknowledging how well the Fever has been playing as of late. And she hasn't exactly changed her approach or tone in regard to her perspective on the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Moreover, she is also under fire from fans after defending a player who made a dirty foul on Clark. While that could have simply been a hard basketball foul, Swoopes knew what she was getting when she decided to stand in Diamond's corner instead of keeping things neutral. And this is where it gets interesting because it looks like the WNBA legend's hatred for Caitlin Clark has no limits. One of the things we can't deny about Swoopes is that she probably knows basketball better than any of us. She's not only one of the greatest college players of all time, but is an undeniable GOAT candidate in the history of the WNBA because she's won MVPs and championships throughout her stellar career. So, in that regard, she should know the sport better than 90% of the population. And knowing the sport means that she should know that Clark is a legit difference maker. She was already hating on Clark before she got to the WNBA, and that was during the time Clark was putting up great numbers in college and breaking records left and right. We all know that Clark broke the women's record for most points scored in college. While a lot of people celebrated this historic achievement, it wasn't really something that Swoopes was happy about. In Gilbert Arenas' podcast, she said,
"This isn't just for Caitlin, but you asked me about Caitlin. If you're going to break a record, to me, if it's legitimate, you have to break that record in the same amount of time that that player said it."
Well, for starters, she was lying when she said that her statement wasn't for Clark. Before Clark became the uncontested queen of scoring in college basketball, Kelsey Plum owned that record. But Swoopes wasn't salty about Plum setting the record a few years ago. In fact, no one was talking badly about her achievement. It was only when Clark broke the record that Swoopes started opening her mouth. And her words didn't even make sense because Clark broke Plum's record in fewer games, even though they both played 139 games in college. So, the fact that Clark was making waves in college wasn't something that Swoopes was happy about at all, and that's something that some people might find confusing, because Clark's record shouldn't be bothering her and her place as one of the greatest players in the history of the WNBA. At one point, she even dissed Clark's scoring in college by claiming that she was taking 40 shots a game. Swoopes was basically saying that the only reason why Clark broke the record was the fact that she had the ultimate green light and was allowed to shoot any kind of shot. It was like Swoopes was also claiming that any player could have done what Clark did in college if they were allowed to shoot as many shots as she did. Now, you'd wonder why she talks a lot about Clark, and why she seems to hate the fact that this young woman has been achieving so much in her career and has been breaking records left and right. But Swoopes started talking more after Clark got to the league. There was a point in time when she wasn't directly attacking the rookie, but it became clear in the past few weeks that she isn't her biggest fan. When talking about the achievements of the Indiana Fever as of late, she famously left out Clark's name when giving props to the Fever players. Stephen A. couldn't understand why anyone would congratulate the Fever for this current run, but leave out their best player, Caitlin Clark, who's been playing at an MVP level these past few weeks. And he pointed out the fact that she should be the bigger person and acknowledge Clark's success. Recently, the WNBA announced that Caitlin Clark was named the Player of the Week, especially with how her ridiculous play has helped the team win a lot more games than the early part of the season. Swoopes, as you probably know, is working as a broadcaster for the WNBA. The broadcast team announced the winners of the Player of the Week honors in the middle of the matchup between the Dallas Wings and the Las Vegas Aces, a game that Swoopes was calling as a broadcaster. But as her broadcast partner was talking about the winners of the award, Swoopes stayed silent the entire time, not even acknowledging the fact that her partner talked about the winners. She simply ignored it, acting like she didn't heard what her partner said. Of course, it all boils down to the fact that Clark was one of the winners of the award, with the other winner being Nafisa Collier. So, she chose to stay silent the entire time until the game resumed. It's probably because of two things. 1. She didn't want to give Caitlin Clark the credit she deserved. 2. If she said anything, especially if she congratulated Collier and kept quiet about Clark, people would go after her. As you all know, the internet was quick to notice Swoopes' silence as people went after her quickly, telling her that she was awkwardly silent about seeing the hated player getting props from the WNBA. In most cases, broadcasters would have congratulated those players, regardless of how they felt about them. Or they could have simply said something professional, even though they didn't have to mention the players' names. Swoopes could have just said, "Congratulations to the winners. You deserve it," and people probably wouldn't have vilified her for that. Instead, she stayed silent. Not talking was the worst thing she could do because we all know that a lot of people tend to give the silent treatment if they don't like someone. In this case, it was clear that she wasn't happy about Clark winning the award, preferring to give her the silent treatment on live television, instead of congratulating her or saying anything against the rookie. But things turned worse for Swoopes. In a recent game between the Fever and the Chicago Sky, Caitlin Clark got fouled hard by Diamond DeShields for no reason at all. This was simply a hard foul by Diamond, but it was kind of clear that there was some intent behind that bump, as she had no reason to be going after the ball when Clark clearly had control of it. As such, the refs slapped her with a flagrant foul penalty 1, giving Clark 2 free throws plus possession. If you saw that firsthand, you'd clearly say that DeShields had a bit of malice behind that foul, even though she would say otherwise. Sheryl Swoopes now suddenly comes in. Instead of keeping the drama level down, she decided to add to it. Of course, she didn't say anything about Caitlin Clark, but she did support Diamond for what happened in that foul. There were strong accusations hurled at DeShields for that flagrant 1 foul on Clark. Swoopes stepped into the mess and tweeted on X saying, "Head up, kid. Hate will not win. You are covered, and ain't nothing these evil people can do about that. All love for you." In short, Swoopes was telling DeShields to keep her head high up and ignore all her haters. Some would say that she was simply trying to cheer DeShields up because the hatred that Clark's fans were throwing at her could have damaged the player's confidence and mental health. But it could also be the fuel that she was adding to the fire, making it clear that she was supporting people who were hurting Clark, and that she wanted different players to follow DeShields and lay the young rookie out with hard fouls and cheap tricks. Fans were quick to respond to Swoopes' tweet. One commenter said, "So you're good with very blatant cheap shots against players just because you don't like them?" Got it. Another one said, "Condoning flagrant fouls now?" It's clear that fans aren't happy about how Swoopes was supporting players for hitting Clark. There's no room for such physicality in the game. And even though we all want the game to return to its physical roots during the 90s and 2000s, being too physical can make it worse. But the fact that Swoopes was seemingly telling DeShields and everyone else to continue what they've been doing is actually nuts. As a legend of the game, you shouldn't be condoning flagrant fouls or anything that's too physical. It also adds fuel to the fire. According to data, 17% of the flagrant fouls this season were committed on Caitlin Clark. This means that the rest of the league really doesn't like the attention that this young woman has been getting from the media and fans. But what makes things worse is that the Chicago Sky have committed 80% of the flagrant fouls committed on Clark. Angel Reese, the Sky's prized rookie, is Caitlin Clark's biggest rival in the WNBA right now. And this rivalry goes all the way back to 2023, when Reese's LSU team defeated Clark's Iowa for the national championship. The rivalry continued into the league as Sky players have also bought into it, fouling Clark hard whenever possible as a way of supporting their rookie. So, by supporting DeShields online, Sheryl Swoopes is kind of stirring the pot. She knows that the Fever and Sky have a heated rivalry going on because of the bigger rivalry between their two star players, and the flagrant foul numbers done by the Sky on Clark are proof of the animosity between the two teams. Swoopes understands what's at stake here, and she's trying to keep the fire burning brighter by telling DeShields and everyone else on that Chicago roster to keep on fouling Clark the way they've been. In some cases, this can be good because it adds drama to the WNBA and makes it a better product. But in all other cases, this can actually be bad for the league because you want to protect the WNBA's biggest star and moneymaker. You don't want people injuring and keeping Clark out of commission for a long time. But that seems to be one of the things that Swoopes is trying to do, as she wants the Sky and basically everyone else in the league to play hard and physically against Clark to make life difficult for her. This can set a dangerous precedent. It's like you're telling Draymond Green to keep on kicking people in the balls or choking people out. We've seen commentators, broadcaster people, and analysts all telling Green to get some help or to knock the antics off instead of supporting him and telling him to keep on doing what he's been doing. In Swoopes' case, While we're yet to see someone choking Clark on live television, supporting the offenders of those hard fouls can be dangerous to Clark and the rest of the WNBA. It's like she's saying that it's okay to hurt people because she doesn't like the one person who's always been getting pushed around by opposing players. As a broadcaster and analyst, your job is to make the WNBA a better product instead of turning fans against the league for the hard fouls that opposing players have been committing on the game's biggest star. But Swoopes has probably forgotten about her responsibility because she's too focused on wanting to bring Clark down from her pedestal. It's a classic case of allowing hatred to take its toll on you as you forget the more important things, which are, in this case, helping the WNBA grow through Caitlin Clark. Now, you might be wondering why it seems like Sheryl Swoopes has a dark agenda against Clark. Well, that's something only she can answer. But there are some theories regarding why she has this seemingly deep hatred for the Indiana rookie. Swoopes was one of the best players during the 90s and early 2000s, as she was a trailblazer for the WNBA when it first started. She won everything she needed to win, including championships and MVPs. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that she's right up there at the top as one of the greatest players the league has ever seen. But even during her prime years, she wasn't attracting the same kind of media attention that Clark has been getting. The league struggled with viewership and fan retention. In fact, the WNBA has been losing money steadily, making it clear that life wasn't financially great for Swoopes and her peers during her peak years in the league. But here comes Caitlin Clark, suddenly taking the league by storm and increasing the viewership exponentially. If you're someone who had to live through the dark times of the league, you'd be wondering why people are now suddenly drawn to the WNBA just because of one person. It also doesn't help that Clark is white. Say what you want about the black versus white narrative, but it's real. It's not about racism, but it's about people not wanting to accept that the game seems to be more attractive to some fans if there's a white woman leading the charge into the future. And we can't blame the fans who want to watch the WNBA now just because the current face of the league is white. Remember that America is predominantly white, and only a minor percentage is black. So, as talented as the black stars of yesteryears were, they were not popular among the white demographics of America. But Clark hits all the right spots. She isn't only white, but plays with the same flair that we've seen from Steph Curry, one of the most popular basketball players of all time. On top of that, she's quite attractive herself. Naturally, people would be drawn to her. Swoopes and a lot of other players probably aren't happy about the fact that, no matter how much they tried to make the league more attractive to fans, it took a white woman to increase viewership numbers exponentially. But Stephen A., among others, accepts the reality of the situation and knows that this is normal in society. And according to him, the best thing to do in this situation is to ride the wave that Clark, the Great White Hope, has started instead of trying to bring her down. Now, this is where it gets interesting because there's a good chance that Swoopes isn't hating on Clark simply because she hates her, but because she gets something out of it. And this is where Stephen A.'s words make sense. At this point in her life, Swoopes' money-making window as an athlete is all but over because she's in her 50s. We can imagine that she didn't make a ton of money during her WNBA career and isn't making a lot of money as a broadcaster nowadays. So, if that's the case, she may be using the Clark platform as a way to make herself more prominent. The best way to attract attention to yourself is by going against the grain, and Swoopes, as smart as she is, probably knows that as well. She knows that she isn't going to attract attention by being Clark's #1 fan or by sucking up to her. If you look at the situation online, the Caitlin Clark haters are getting more media attention than her supporters. So, if that's the case, then Swoopes is probably doing this for the same reason why Angel Reese has positioned herself as Clark's biggest rival. Swoopes knows that she can't be Clark's on-court rival anymore because she's too old to play, but she knows that she can attract the same kind of attention that she wants by talking about Clark, or, in her case, refusing to acknowledge what she's been doing for the league and the Indiana Fever. When fans notice that someone her caliber as a WNBA legend isn't giving Clark her props, she gets the publicity she needs to advance her platform. She can now attract more people to her podcast, or increase her online presence and branding simply by hating on the most popular female basketball player on the planet. As they say, negative publicity is still publicity, and Swoopes may be a genius if that's her end goal as an analyst who appears to hate Caitlin Clark more than anyone else in the world. This is the same case for Skip Bayless. You're probably only familiar with that name because he's probably the biggest LeBron James hater on the planet. He's made a living out of talking bad about LeBron on TV and social media. That's because he knows that people are going to flock over to him to either support him for criticizing LeBron or to bring him down for talking bad about their king. We're talking about America here, which loves drama more than anything. That's exactly the reason why reality TV shows are so big in this country. So, because Swoopes knows that she can stay relevant and make money by hating on Clark, she's riding the wave that this young star started. And that's probably the smartest business decision she's ever made in her career, knowing well enough that she can still position herself to make more money out of the rising popularity of the league, even if she's no longer playing. The worst-case scenario here, however, is that Sheryl Swoopes is probably just a hater who doesn't want Clark to succeed. But she's a great woman, and we know that it's probably not in her personality to hate for the sake of hating. Then again, with all the hatred that Swoopes and all of the other so-called haters have been spewing online, fans are wondering whether or not this can affect Caitlin Clark or the league in general. Well, for starters, Clark probably already knows that having haters comes with the territory of being the most popular female basketball player right now. Her PR people have already told her about this well before she got to the WNBA, and they may have also told her that some haters will try to act as haters to gain a small portion of the popularity that she's getting. This is the exact reason why we've never heard anything out of Clark. She's never talked bad about Sheryl Swoopes or clapped back at people for talking bad about her, because she probably understands that these guys aren't hating for the sake of hating, but are hating to make some money out of her. It's all part of the journey of being a star athlete and a professional basketball player. It's not as if guys like Michael Jordan and LeBron James didn't get their fair share of criticisms from fellow players and former athletes. As the WNBA continues to grow, it's going to be perfectly normal for analysts and legends to talk more about Clark and her fellow players in a bad light, not because they want to, but because it adds a lot of drama to the league. And we know that more drama means more money in the long run, and more money means more growth for the WNBA. So that means that the saga between Caitlin Clark and Sheryl Swoopes is far from over. It's likely that Swoopes will never acknowledge Clark, or give her the respect and due she deserves. This is likely going to become one of the longest-running dramas in the history of the WNBA, and that's perfectly fine, because it makes the league better while benefiting both parties. After all, Skip never stopped hating on LeBron for 20 years, and we know that they're both worth millions of dollars right now. So, if Swoopes starts showing some love to Clark anytime soon, she risks the chance of becoming the Skip Bayless of women's basketball. And while that's going to hurt her reputation, it's certainly going to be great for her bank account.